What's up, my Wizards Dev from MTG? We make decks, and we've got one today. One of my favorite kind of things to do, a budget deck. And one of my favorite kind of things in Magic, Eldrazi, which is a lot of people are super excited about. So I figured, instead of having to spend millions of dollars, like some of these deck techs lately, but millions of dollars on Eldrazi, we'll figure just for the price of maybe one Ulamog, or maybe even less than that, we'll build a whole deck of Eldrazi, and we'll have a good time. And it's going to be synergistic, and in some ways competitive, it's going to be fun, and it's going to be a thing of beauty to witness. So let's give this $20 Eldrazi thing a try. I think we've actually come up with something really, really cool. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Normally I would give you the creatures and the spells and the blah, 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 but this time I'm going to give you, I'm going to do it a different way because the deck is slightly different. It functions like a ramp deck, so I'm going to tell you all the relevant things that ramp us and sort of our philosophy in that department. And then I'm going to give you all the Eldrazi and the big stuff we're playing that we're ramping into. So let's give this a shot. Well, our philosophy in general is to produce at least 6 mana by turn 4. We've got a variety of ways to get there, and I'll tell you about them as they come up. First of all, Blister Paw. We're playing 4 full copies, a whole playset of Blister Paw here. You may have heard Tony or I at some point on this channel refer to this as the new Llanowar Elf. And we're not joking either. Of course, this functions like a Doom Traveler, one of the cards I really, really love, as a chump blocker to sort of help us at least not take so much damage early game while we're trying to ramp. And produces ramp for us too. That's a ramp deck's dream, and I'll definitely play 4 copies of this. It's really, really cool. You can't chump block and tap your Mystic for mana, your Elvish Mystic. You can do both with this. That's really cool. We're playing 4 copies of Whisper of the Wilds and 4 copies of Leaf Gilder. If you've got the dollars, definitely play Rattleclaw Mystic over Leaf Gilder, because we have 1 card that we're producing blue mana, that we need to produce blue mana for in the deck. It's definitely important to play like 8 mana rampers in the deck, because we're playing a lot of creatures that are just crazy, and we can get very, very high cost, and we can get to 6 mana on turn 4 pretty easily, which is again our philosophy, by just casting 2 mana guys. Turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 we have 6, we get our land drop, so there's that too. But Whisper, definitely we have tricks and synergies with that in the deck that allow us to get there very, very fast, so I'm going to definitely play that. But if you got the money, Rattleclaw over Leaf Gilder every day. Here's the reason I wouldn't play Beast Color Savant guy in the comments. I'm playing 2 copies of Call of the Scions, which started off as 3, but bumped down a little bit to 2. Obviously, again, our philosophy, we want to be playing a 4-mana thing on turn 3, so Call of the Scions doesn't necessarily put us behind. In fact, it plays into that same philosophy of 6 mana by turn 4. Turn 3 we play a Call of the Scions, turn 4 we play a land, we have 6 mana. So helps out with that too, but is also chunk blockers in the meantime. I really, really like the card, by the way. But chump blockers in the meantime, or can be ramped for us. I actually really, really like the card. For Eyeless Watcher in this extremely budgeted deck, Eyeless Watcher, though, again, helps us out with that philosophy of 6 mana on turn 4. If we can play, turn 2 mana guy, turn 3 Eyeless Watcher. Turn 4 will untap with 6 mana on the board if we haven't, chump block with any Scion tokens. And if we can play a land, that puts us all the way up to 7, which we can play, Bala Ged on turn 4, which is actually really, really cool. So, yeah, definitely Eyeless Watcher provides a chump blocker in the meantime, plus 2 Eldrazi Scions that could also be chump blockers, But 9 times out of 10, we're going to want to get the ramp out of it, and that's why he's in the deck, and he really is good enough for a 4-of. 3 copies of From Beyond, another thing that goes into our 6 and 4 strategy, If we can drop it, 3rd turn, drop it From Beyond, 4th turn, get our Scion token for the turn, and then draw and drop a land, 6 mana, yet again. So, From Beyond provides us crazy value all throughout the game. I would play the full 4 if this wasn't just a $20 deck, I'm not really sure exactly what I'd cut, probably Eyeless Watcher all day, right? But this From Beyond has been absolutely bonkers, for me at least. Really, really good in games that go long, pretty darn good against control, especially game 1, and just we can tutor up an Eldrazi. That's great. Everyone has to respect that all day. So, yeah, From Beyond has been really good. Really good and fine in multiples because you get more Eldrazi Scions and you can tutor up more guys. Yes, From Beyond. I know I talked about Eyeless Watcher a second ago, but this is probably the weirdest card I'm going to talk about, honestly. A forgotten card, or mostly forgotten, from the last block. This is Surrak, the Hunt Caller, a guy I've never forgotten about. I know some of you haven't either. Surrak is a pet card for some people, but Surrak is especially insane in this deck, and he sort of goes into the god draw, like the best draw that we can actually do, you know. Second turn, Whisper of the Wilds. Third turn, Surrak. That turns on the Whisperer's, you know, 2 green mana ability. Turn 4, we have 6 mana. We can drop either of our 2 6 mana huge guys in Conduit of Ruin or Drowner of Hope. We'll talk about them a little bit later. And then swing for at least 10 on the 4th turn with a hasty, huge Eldrazi guy and the Surrak. So, just really, really, really important and relevant play that turns out to be. So, yes, all day, you know. Obviously, we can try to get the 6 mana on turn 4 with a lot of other ways that I've already discussed here and play either Drowner or Conduit on turn 6, but they won't be able to swing haste if there's not a Surrak on the battlefield. And there's really no other way to get to it unless you have played Whisper on turn 2, Surrak on turn 3. That's sort of the magic sequence. So, if you can pull it off, Surrak leads to some of the best, most explosive and out of nowhere plays that you can just possibly make, especially for budget in Standard right now. So yeah, really have done nothing but like Surrak so far, and he'll almost always get turned on. He sort of fits really naturally in a deck where a lot of creatures have lots of power. Makes sense. On to our Eldrazi. I mentioned this guy a second ago. This is Conduit of Ruin. Conduit of Ruin is actually insane. If we can play this on turn 4, then we could often be able to search up one of the most important cards in our deck. Being able to lower the cost of the things that you tutor for is just like, the card is crazy. It's a huge body, it tutors a guy, and it makes them less expensive to cast. Like, I don't see why this is still like $1, you know, last time I checked at least. So, yeah, let's definitely do this. Not only is it an amazing 4th turn play, but it sets up the rest of the game for us. So, yeah. One copy, as previously mentioned, of Oblivion Sower. The card is that good, and if you have more copies of it or a couple of bucks, you know, definitely play the full 4 of these, you know, even if you have to cut smaller Eldrazi or something like that, because the card just is that awesome. Like, I think it's going to have some impact on Standard and the ramp decks, definitely. Just Oblivion Sower is crazy. It's crazy every time you play it, and you'll often get, especially in this format where, like, Control is playing a lot of lands are going to be playing huge creatures, Landfall plays extra lands. So, obviously, this, you're so likely to get like 2 or more even, you know, lands off of this, and that ramps you into your bigger Eldrazi in turns later. And you get a huge body out of it. Just Oblivion Sower is insane. And all of this happens, by the way, except for the huge body, regardless of whether it resolves. Like, the card has just been nothing but just amaze balls, scrotum sack. It's just, the thing's good. Oblivion Sower is good, and if I wasn't under a budget, I would definitely play more copies. 2 copies of Drowner of Hope here, which I did want to talk a little bit more about. If you're able to pull off that golden sequence of, you know, Whisper into Surrak into Drowner, then you're able to tap down at least 2 of their guys, you know, and then swing in with 2 huge hasty dudes for, what, 10 damage? Most of the time, this can tap down their valid blockers and just blow through for damage. So, Drowner of Hope has been, like, a very, very good card, honestly, and I could see this being in a thing, but I'm not entirely sure if it's got the chops for Standard, but it's worth noting that it does give you 2 guys when it comes into play. Those guys do something, and as long as he's in play, they do extra things, you know. If they go to remove him, you can always, in response, tap guys down. I mean, the card is not just awful, it doesn't do nothing when it hits the board, and it's got a fine frame, is splashable. I mean, I like a lot of things about Drowner of Hope. I don't really have that much hope for it in Standard, but in this deck, it's actually really, really good and serves its purpose very well in that one particular sequence. But that is an important turn sequence. 3 copies of Bane of Bala Ged. I keep bringing this guy up, and everyone wants him to be good. Obviously, he has to be out for an entire turn before he does anything for you, unless, of course, you have a Surrak in play. You drop this guy with a Surrak in play, then screw the argument that you have to wait a whole turn, you know. You can just, you know, swing with him, and all's well in that case, especially in this format, where everyone's playing like Ruinous Path. We don't have Hero's Downfall anymore. You won't have to worry about an instant speed, or too many. There's not many that people are playing. Instant speed response to you just dropping a guy and immediately swinging with it. So this will take a lot of people off guard if you have a Surrak in play, and they'll have to like sacrifice, basically exile 2 things that they control, and it's just, it gets absolutely crazy. It really does. If this thing stays out for more than a turn or 2, you're just going to eat up most of their board, and it's just, the card is good. And then we're into the weird things. 1 copy of Breaker of Armies and 1 copy of Endless One. Now you could just, instead of the Breaker, you could always do a Bane of Bala Ged, but I do, or if you have the money, you could put, you know, Oblivion Sower in or anything like that. So, very interchangeable slots here. But Endless One has actually been like a 12-12 for me a bunch of times. So, yeah, Endless One is fine, especially in a budget build. I really, really have enjoyed playing the card. And it can be as big or as small as you need it to be, you know. Early game, you can play this against aggro on turn 2 or 3 and have, you know, a fairly big guy that's, you know, you'll never overpay for it. Here are our lands. It looks like there's a varied and, you know, diverse land base here. It's not necessarily. You're playing mostly forests, if you haven't noticed. But Sanctum is good. Blighted Woodland is awesome, it turns out. Evolving Wilds, I just want to make sure, just a little insurance on that blue source so that we can cast Drowner. So that's pretty much all there is to it in the land. Here's the sideboard. You'll note that we're, you know, mostly tuned against creature decks, but we don't really have that much defense against them. You know, Plummet is okay against some decks. Titan's Presence is okay against some decks. We might be able to play that in the main board, but we're really devoted to getting our dudes out. Jedi Offshoot is actually surprisingly good against aggro decks, so there's that to consider. But Display of Dominance is the all-star on the sideboard. That's why it gets a whole 4 of just crazy against Jace, Nixilis, Sorin, a million other planeswalkers, Kiora, you know. So, and the card's awesome. And here are your power rankings. This is a final score of 59, which is actually really good for, you know, a budget deck. The deck is a blast to play. You know, we're very consistent because we've got so many ways of getting to the mana count that we want to get to, you know. The deck is fairly synergistic for just, you know, a $20 budget thing, and the Eldrazi are really fun to drop on the board. If your opponent has no answer for them right away, especially if you have a Surrak in play, they might even have a Ruinous Path in hand. It doesn't matter if you have a Surrak out. They're exiling 2 permanents if you just played a Bane of Bala Ged and you have a Surrak out, which is not uncommon, especially with creatures like Conduit that can tutor for you. You've got your From Beyond can tutor for you. So it's fairly easy to come across these creatures, you know. The deck, again, very consistent, very synergetic. I was very surprised by its performance in testing, and I want you to build this one and let me know how you feel. Because I love mono green, I love Stompy, I love ramp, and everything comes together in this deck. Very good, well-oiled machine in a lot of ways, although we are vulnerable to both aggro and control strategies. Although that vulnerability did not stop green-red ramp devotion from being a huge presence in the format last go-round in the last standard. And I don't think that a deck like this is any different. We could do some really good stuff to this if we had some dollars, especially being able to play Ulamog would be great. And more Oblivion Sowers would lend itself to playing more Ulamog. So the deck is not that hard to modify, and you've got like a long time to get those cards. So trade up your butt off and get it done. And the deck performs pretty well in its base form too. I really enjoy playing this deck, if you can't tell my enthusiasm for it. Well, next up, I'm going to do a deck that I've seen a lot of support for lately, which I'm really excited about, because I support this deck as well. We're going to do the green-white life gain deck that wins either just off regular damage or Felidar Sovereign winning the game. So, really excited, been brewing that deck up, got some bugs to work out, but we're getting there. Really like the deck. I've always loved decks like this. So, yes, we're doing green-white life gain next, or at least I am. So, stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you haven't done that, because then you'll get that content and all the crazy stuff we do after that. Like, share, comment if you enjoyed this content. I hope you did, because I know I sure as hell did. The deck is really fun. I might play the set F&M for like the rest of the season. So, in any case, hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching, my wizards.